Hey everyone, thanks for joining us this week on our expert interview series. And this week I've got someone really special covering a really important topic. Now, I met this person on another group that I'm involved with in terms of growing our Facebook groups and marketing online organically. So I've had a couple discussions with her, and the really important thing that I found happened was she's an absolute master at hiring, and hiring is one of the most important things that I found to really growing and scaling your business. And as most of us know, it's not a really big topic that people go into a lot of details with, but if you get it wrong, it can end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars, really damaging your brand and causing all sorts of other problems. Now, unfortunately, I'm speaking from actual experience on this, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars lost in potential sales from not attracting people right or having the right strategy to plan to make sure I have the right hires, and also being under the gun to hire someone that maybe was not the best fit. So I'm really excited to have you on here, because ultimately we're going to be able to get a little bit more insight into the hiring strategies here. So I really appreciate you joining us, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into being an expert in the hiring field and building performance teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the introduction, Brad. Hi, everyone. I'm Negar. I run a company called Performia, and basically, I guess how I got involved, I've been doing this for over 12 years now. And I actually started at 19, and I worked my way up through the company on achieving quite some milestones and breaking some records. But I'm here because I'm so passionate about the results we help our clients achieve. And by that specifically, it's, the confidence of getting the right person. Because, like you said, Brad, it's pretty damaging and devastating when you can't get the right person. And it actually gets quite emotional, because you start thinking, maybe I can't grow my business. Maybe that dream is like, it's too far-fetched. Maybe I need to wind it back down a bit. And that's like not cool. It's just, you just need to make some changes and tweaks to the hiring so you can actually get the right person and achieve your dreams and your goals. So when we see our clients get inspired again and get confident again and get it right, and go from having a few people to now, 20, 50 people, and revenues increased and profit turned around, strong balance sheet, that's when you go perfect, and that's what lights us up at the end of the day. And that's why I still do what I do, because like you said, it's like, if you've got your marketing right, and we always said this, like, if you've got a good product, right, and you know how to sell it, how to market it, the next real barrier to your growth and expansion is really who you bring in. It's your hiring and who you bring in to actually grow the business and grow the company and actually deliver on what you want them to. So sometimes we find, a company has really good product, good margins, good way to sell it, but then they fall over in this people area, and that just undoes everything. So we want to help them not let people undo this and get it right, so that they just go top speed ahead. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a really big thing. It's that I talk to a lot of practice owners, and it's sort of like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to hire someone this week. And yeah, I guess I'll just look at hiring someone. And, it is really one of the most important aspects to being able to grow your business. And it can be extremely leverageable, or it can be extremely frustrating. So, I think that it's really important to underscore that the fact that you really need to have a strategy and a system for it. And I'm all about teaching strategy, structures, and systems, and, having them being able to be optimized and tracking. And the same is really with hiring. And I know that's why we had some good conversations initially, just on having those strategies. So let's kind of start like where, they got their marketing systems down, their sales systems are really good, and, they can't work any more hours. They can't really charge much more money, and they want to start working on the business and not in the business. And they're thinking, hey, I need to do my first kind of hire. Maybe like give some insight in terms of like where you generally would recommend someone start.
Yeah, perfect question. And you're right. You mentioned the word strategy, and hiring is actually a strategic exercise, because the person you hire today that's going to impact the future of your company, whether it, it goes, whether it's triumph or a catastrophe, so it's actually hiring is a strategic decision. And that's why it needs to be done right, because, and this is a problem, a lot of the time owners and, managers, as soon as they get busy and productive and they get, they don't have time, they palm it off to someone with no experience, and worse, someone who's not productive. And in fact, the person that needs to be doing your hiring is like the most productive person in the company, because they can detect performance in a person. So if we look at the steps of hiring, so let's say, yep, I've got everything going good, and yep, I'm about to grow this area, so I need to hire someone. What's a typical role that you feel is one of the earliest roles that companies would hire in practices?
Yeah, so from a health practice standpoint, I always recommend that someone generally get a role like a front desk or administrative person. The reason why is because it's depending where you live, but I mean, in Canada, it's like $15 to $18 an hour work. And, as practitioners, if we're charging 100 or, even 60 or 80 or 100, 200, 300 plus, depending on what type of practice you have, you don't want to be doing $15 an hour work that someone else could be doing. And it's also lower skilled. So chances are that people are probably not going to mess up, being able to, send invoices or,
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, but yeah, because I've experienced it. But that's generally where we start. And then usually we look at building a practitioner on. I'd say a big mistake that most people have is they hire a practitioner before they have someone to support them. And then next thing you know, it kind of falls apart. So that's, I guess, kind of a bit of strategy.
Okay. Yep. No, good one. And the other part is like you bring someone in that role who can create so much value as well on whatever wage they're on. So that makes sense. And I think it's not just in Canada, it's, everywhere. It makes sense to bring someone in to take care of all of that and bring in so much more value to the company. And actually with reception and front desk, so often this role gets underestimated, the importance of it. And one thing we say to every company, doesn't matter what industry, we say to them, your reception role is the most important role to actually get right. And we've actually seen this. Your reception performance correlates with your sales, actually, because 100%. Imagine someone calls, comes to and now that person doesn't get routed correctly, or it doesn't, they don't get received correctly and put in the right area. That's just like easily going to lose income. So one of the fastest ways to grow your sales is actually get your reception area functioning really, really well. But now let's say, I'm about to start hiring for that role. One of the first steps to do is to, before starting the job ads, you've got to get clarity on exactly what you're looking for. And so you've got to have a document in place where you really clearly write this out. And we're not just talking about number of years of experience, number of this. No, it's like you need to write down actually what's the expected result from that position. And then you work back from that. So you go, I'm going to pay this person this much. And what's the end result I want back from them? And you document that and you write all their to-dos and their responsibilities. Well, one of the areas every company gets caught up in is just writing to-do lists and writing duties and responsibilities. And that's actually how you create a team of average performance. That's not what you want. You want people who are focused on outcomes. And it doesn't have to be a salesperson to be focused on outcomes. It can be your receptionist. It can be your CEO. It can be your cleaner. No difference. So got to get that right. Like, what's the outcome? And then have the responsibilities and have some way to actually measure their future contribution. Because otherwise, how do you know that that person's actually adding value and not just looking and being busy? Then, of course, in addition to that, you work out, what's the future opportunities for this person? Why should they actually apply for this job? Really write down the motives and have an understanding of the kind of personality that you're looking for too. Because also, just because someone's going to be fantastic, for that practice over there, doesn't mean they're going to be fantastic for my practice over here. It could be a completely different ballgame. So you need to make it specific for you. Then next, when you're writing the job ad, write it to the person. Don't just paste the job description. Look, I don't know how job boards are over there, but I think this, we're in 24 countries. So I think this information applies to a wide region, but it's like right to the person when you're writing the job ad. And like, just imagine like a big tip with job ads that we give, because we write ads very differently to other companies. And that's why our clients get different results. So it's like, imagine the person sitting right across you and you're writing that, you're talking to them, and then like just write the job ad to that person. So that's a really important part. And also like, don't sell so many benefits. Have you, Brad, have you seen ads that are like, easy job, easy money, we'll give you everything? Have you ever seen ads like that?
Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, but that's right. But a lot of the time, this is what companies think they should do. It's like they just talk about the benefits. And this actually, what this does, and this is a really crucial point, your job ad is actually the very first quality control in your entire hiring process, the job ad. Mm-hmm. So it's like just getting the job ad right. It's like, it's the smallest part of your hiring process that making some changes can drastically improve the overall hiring. So, talk about the real truth in the job ad. Don't sell things. It's like, don't sell the benefits. You'll get the wrong people. There's time for that. If anything, scare them a little bit in the job ad. You'll be amazed by the difference in result you get with people applying. And then once people start applying, you need to have a process for screening people. And a lot of companies, they look at resume, they look at experience, how many years, etc. But resumes are actually super misleading. And off a resume, it's like, you can't tell if someone is actually going to be the right choice. Like, let me ask you, Brad, have you ever hired someone that looked and sounded fantastic, had the perfect CV, had all the experience, you wanted, but it's like they didn't turn out the way you hoped? Have you ever had that?
Yeah, 100%.
You have? Okay. What about, have you ever hired someone that maybe their resume didn't look so good, or you had some doubts about, but you hired them and then they turned out to be fantastic? Have you ever had that?
Okay, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this happens so often. And see, the biggest, and then this is obviously the extreme, but then you've got all in the middle too. But these are the two biggest mistakes in hiring. It's like hiring that person that you think is fantastic, has all the experience, all the credentials, and they turn out to be a dud, absolute disaster. And it can take sometimes years to find these people because they look and sound fantastic. And then the other biggest hiring mistake is not hiring someone that doesn't present well, but is actually fantastic. This is also a big hiring mistake, hiring someone that is what we call the not obvious choice.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And that's one thing that kind of goes back, like, you're just dropping tons of knowledge bombs here. And I appreciate it. And I think it goes like, that really goes back to, what you said first. And I think that's one of the most important things that people really need to consider, is that when you're hiring someone, you're hiring to solve a problem. You're not hiring to just hire someone, but there's a problem you're trying to do. And at the end of the day, a person needs to get an ROI for you. So if I'm hiring front desk, a lot of people that I talk to, I don't want to hire a front desk because it's going to cost me all this money. Like, my front desk person I know probably makes about 100 to 120 to 150K a year in revenue, because they're answering the phone, they're sales trained, they're building a good retention service. They're getting referrals, they're getting testimonials, they're sending cards to people and retaining. So, people look at it to the wrong aspect. For me, I look at the front desk and say, hey, this person's probably going to generate 150K. They can retain people and whatnot. And then that's the objective. They're there as a result to retain people and create an amazing culture. How we do that was the second thing you said, is we need to have tangibility. And I think that that's a really big mistake. You mentioned the job ad, is everyone says, this drives me nuts. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And it probably drive me crazy if I was in your position. I read ads all the time, job ads all the time. And it's like, must be friendly, must be on time. Well, I would hope that you would do. I would have to tell you about them. So, when I look at like the tangibles, it's, taking, how do they need to get X number of referrals per month, X number of sales or whatever, you know what I mean? And actually having things you can hold them accountable to. What are your thoughts on that?
I love everything you said, and you're so spot on. And look, two things I want to say in direct to that is that, how you said in the job ad, they talk about you got to be friendly and you got to be this. Do you know why that's a big problem to say to ask for personality traits or anything subjective, it's because, sorry?
You can't track it, and it's individual to the person. Someone might think they're friendly, but they're really not.
Exactly. It's subjective, right? But see, what happens actually is that the really ethical people that are really honest, they'll look at that and go, I don't know. Sometimes once I wasn't friendly. 1 out of the 100 times in my life, I wasn't friendly. So maybe I'm not the friendly person they're looking for. I won't apply. And then you get the person who's the biggest, I won't even say, but it's like, they'll go, oh yeah, I'm friendly all the time. Yeah, I'm great, and then they apply. So you actually get the people that should apply not applying because it's subjective. So it's like the people who have integrity, they go, oh, maybe I'm not the right person. And it's the exact same thing as putting things like, you have fantastic knowledge of blah, blah software. That's, subjective as well. Again, you have someone that goes, oh, I'm only 98% in that software, I won't apply. Someone else goes, oh yeah, I've seen the cover of that in the shop. I saw the back of it. I know what it's like. I'll apply. So this is a problem, right? And then the next thing, I love how you've got your reception set up. Sounds like that person's adding a lot of value and you've structured it so well. And in fact, we say that it's like when you hire, the person should be producing, depending on the role, 3 to 5 times at least their wage. So it's like in value. That's how they should be creating it. And that's how it's actually the roles being justified. And it's not always sales. It can be lots of different ways. And even like when people come and say, hey, someone might come to you and say, hey, look, I've been here a while. It's like I'd like a pay rise. This happens quite a lot with our clients here in dental practice, It's like they say, hey, I've been here a while. It's like, I think I should get a pay rise. And a lot of companies, doesn't matter what industry, they get a little bit scared when someone asks for a pay rise. I don't know if you've ever sort of seen this with your clients, but it's like it's like a bit of a tough question when someone wants more money. But it's actually a great conversation. Because if someone comes to you and they say, hey, look, I'm earning 50K a year, I'd like to earn 70K a year. It's like the way to handle that is go, hey, fantastic. Let's work out how you can make that. And then it's like you sit with them and then you work out what actually should be produced in value so that they can earn the 70K. Because it's not like just being somewhere necessarily is not, it's not the thing. It's like, okay, it's like, let's work out all these other things. If this is really valuable for me. If you do this, it's like you absolutely earn that extra 20K. So it's actually a fantastic conversation to have with people because it allows you to actually push production in your organization. So we love those questions, when people want pay. So I love the way you've structured it. And, so that's the ad part. And then there's the screening part is actually making sure you hire someone because knowledge and experience and credentials, that's only one part of the hiring. A lot of the time companies hire someone and then they use the probation period, which can be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to decide if that person is actually going to perform and be the right person for the job. And it's actually too late by that point. You need to know that before. You need to know the potential of the person before you actually hire them. You need to know, are they actually, going to be the right person? And that's why it's like the traditional interviewing techniques, they don't work. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. They're a little bit hit and miss.
People are used to them though. So like I find like traditional questions, people know what they're going to ask. So you know what I mean? So, I mean, we'll probably talk a little bit about some different questions and what your process is. Cause I don't know what yours is. I always like to take a long time too. Like that's my first way to filter people is like take a longer time and not have to rush it. So that way, I have some interviews and I can ask them other questions. Cause I think people are used to like, hey, I do a pre-interview and they're going to ask me these questions. What's my strength? What's my weakness? And all that type of stuff. Right. So they almost like autopilot what questions are going to pop up.
Yeah, you're right. There's an abundance of material online about how to answer questions, which is why we never ask even questions like what's your strength or weakness or, tell me, like if we want to understand how someone handled a particular technical scenario, we'll ask like, tell me about a time where you handled that or what's your strength in that area, we might ask, but that's more down the track. But, our first interviews are about 10, 15 minutes. And
by phone?
if we really like the Pardon?
So you do them like on the phone or
it can be either. So it's like, we can take longer if we want to. If we want to go more in depth, we can take 30 minutes, 40 minutes and longer. But it's like we can capture the essence of whether I'm interested in this person in even 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and if we have a lot of candidates applying, like more than 10, 15 candidates, we automate that process. We send them an online quick questionnaire where they write answers. And then from that, we know very quickly who we want to spend time with. Like, you know, imagine you've got, like we had a project with a company doing a graduate hiring. They had 9,000 candidates.
It's crazy.
Right. It's like, and we were the first point of screening. So we could pinpoint with accuracy which one very quickly to focus on. So you can't do that off resume or off, you know, interview. It takes too much. But look, basically, what you want to know about is like, how has this person added value in the past groups they've been a part of and in previous companies? Like, you know, you're hiring them to do a job for you here. Wouldn't you be interested in, if you're hiring someone with a proven track record and experience in your area, wouldn't you be interested in knowing how they performed in the past? Like an example, right? Let's say I'm a soccer coach and, you know, I want to hire a striker, right? Someone to strike goals. And then I'm interviewing strikers and I say, tell me, like, how many goals did you score last season? And he says, oh, look, last season, I broke my leg and I wasn't really playing. It wasn't a very good season. And the coach says, okay, well, tell me about the season before that. Oh, look, the season before that, it rained a lot. So I actually didn't really get to play much. And then you go, all right, the coach at this point is getting a bit frustrated, right? And I go, okay, well, tell me about the season before that. And he's like, all right, I'm so glad you asked me about that season. You know, that season I was so ready to get the ball from the teammates and score, but nobody would pass the ball to me. You know, so it's like, how do you, like, as a coach or like the interviewer, how do you feel that, you know, what decision are they going to make after interviewing someone like this for a striker?
Yeah.
Next, you know, not interested. It's like, because they couldn't demonstrate some added value and performance. So it doesn't matter with this person how many years of experience he has or what a nice personality he has. It's like, there's no sign he can add value in the future. So you need to find out very quickly, like, what value someone has actually added in the past. That's the first point we look at. And if that's there, then we're interested to know more about personality. And we have an online questionnaire we use where we can get a lot of insight into people. We don't like to put people into boxes. It's not a very good way of doing it. And then after that, it's like we meet them and do a little bit of a longer interview at that point with those shortlisted people. And then we now do a more cultural check. So, you know, how do I feel with this person? Because also feeling is important. If, you know, everything looks good on paper, but you just don't feel a bit off with that person, there's something not right. And one golden tip as well is like, should never go ahead with a hiring if you're in doubt. If you have some sort of a doubt, don't go ahead. You need to explore that doubt. Either look more into why that is, or just look for someone else. It's never okay to go ahead with a doubt because it will bubble up later.
I think a lot of people do that because they get under the gun and are like, well, I need to hire someone and I got two options and this person's better than this one. So I'm just going to hire that person. And
this is the problem. You never just have two options. You know, it's like you always have a third option, but it's like whether you go, right now I feel pretty desperate, you know, but I hear what you're saying. And that's when sometimes, you know, it's hit and miss. You get it right, you get lucky, but sometimes it becomes a disaster. And look, the last thing, which is really important, once you go, yep, looks good, like this person, the most important step is reference checking. And in some companies or some countries, actually, it's like against cultural values sometimes, or it's like they go, oh, it's company policy, we don't do reference checks, or, oh no, we just trust the person, or trust me. It's like, let's just throw that out, and you need to do reference checks. It's the most important step in the hiring process. It's actually what puts the quality seal on the hiring. Mm-hmm. And also, like, if you've got a recruitment company doing your hiring for you, do the reference checks yourself. You basically want someone to do the reference checks who's got no vested interest in that placement. Okay, so it's like, so just do the reference checks. And when you're doing reference checks, a massive, massive, massive tip, because we've done so many and we've had so many horror stories as well. It's like when you do reference checks, you need to know who you're talking to. So just because I said, hey, blah, blah is my boss, George is my boss, and here's his mobile, and I reported to him, does that actually mean it's true?
Yeah, and I've had that case a lot of the time that's not. You know what I mean? So
that's right. Sometimes it happens, yeah. And so you can be set up, and we've caught fraudulent people. So it's like you can be set up, and sometimes it's innocent. Like there's the most innocent one that we catch very quickly, but there's the more actually cynical ones, like really bad, but they've actually, in the past, we discovered they had formed networks with their referees and then moved companies and basically like ripped off companies. Like they would earn commission on a massive contract, and then they would quit and they would get a refund, but the guy's already been paid. And they did this several times, and it's like no one ever caught them. So look, it can happen. And so basically when you do reference checks, don't do it lightly, go really thorough. Don't go in wanting to just get the positives. Look for things that could go wrong, because it could be it's your last line of defense. So do that really properly. And then once you've done the reference checks, and obviously it's contracts, employment contracts. And in the contract, again, one thing that's really important is like, don't just make it, and again, this is not legal advice, so check your relevant country's legal advice, but basically, don't just make it a legal contract if possible, or have an additional document to it where you actually talk about the role and talk again about those key results that you identified right at the start of the hiring, with the expectations, this is the point where we love you or not, it's like in terms of performance and quotas, and like actually, because then down the track, this makes your onboarding, but also your review process really simple, because you just, bring up that agreed document that they've signed, and you go, hey, yeah, look, you're at 3 months, you should actually be here, but you're a bit below, so we need you to work on that. Because a lot of the times why companies also can't manage people properly is because they never set the expectation right at the beginning. So it's like they actually set up the person for a bit of a fail.
Yeah, and I think that's one really big thing that I think we should go back to, even highlight a bit, is like when we're talking about like we're hiring people for a result, and then what constitutes that result. So one thing I always look at is the skill sets that are needed to be able to accomplish those, and what tasks do they need to be able to do, and then what are the key performance metrics. And then I always, like you mentioned, like going back to a time and not getting sold on the person being friendly. It's always like the first date. Like everyone, I think Tony Robbins talks about it, calling like softening or something like that, where people like put on a facade when they're meeting someone because they don't want people to see their real personality. So people are like, oh, you know what? I really like her personality, but something doesn't quite seem right, but she seems like a nice person. Instead of like getting down to the facts and saying, okay, well, you said that you were able to get patients retained in this scenario, like patients retained at 80%. Well, tell me about it, how you did that. What systems did you have? Tell me about a time that this happened. You could very quickly determine if someone did it, because number one, I've done it myself. So, I've heard it all or done it to some capacity. And I think that that's really, really important to really highlight, is that when you're hiring someone for the result. But what needs to happen day to day, and what can you track tangibly, so that way you're not making emotional decisions. And too many people make emotional decisions in business, and that completely can create catastrophic problems. It's the same thing. I always say hiring is marketing, sales, and delivery. It's the same thing as your marketing strategy and sales. But people don't think of it that way. You would never go into a marketing and saying, well, you know what, I'm going to spend 10 grand this month on advertising. Maybe I'll get some ads or not, but there's no way to track it. Well, it seems like a good ad. I like the picture, so I guess I'll spend more money on it. They have no actual direction. No, you're going to look at click-through rates. You're going to look at cost per lead and all this other stuff. So I think it's really important to kind of highlight what you mentioned earlier with those skill sets. And even as you go through the very end with the contracts, this is why we're hiring you. I tell people we're hiring you to retain patients. We're hiring you to manage the stages of these deal pipelines and to hit these metrics. That's why this is what you're held accountable to. And in Canada, we have 90 days, and that 90 days is really, we're testing you out, but these are the things that you need to be hired for. because so many people get hired for front desk, and then next thing you know, they're responsible for sales, but you never taught them that. You never told them that. So you're hiring them for one reason, then firing them for a next, which I'm
that's
sure
what can get you into trouble.
What's
yeah.
that?
Oh, that's great. You're doing a lot of right things. That's exactly right.
Well, it costs me a lot of money and time. So
that's right. The cheaper way to discover your knowledge. But no, you're right. You're doing all the right things, and it is about setting them up right. So that's why we say get the initial fact finding done correctly at the start, because that just feeds into your ad and then feeds into your contract. It's consistent, and then also feeds into your future reviews. Then it's like you can, and also the people love it too. And especially if you've hired a productive person, they actually like the game of knowing how they're tracking. They like numbers, they like measuring. And one really key thing is like, you got to measure results, because, like you also said, everyone has that facade, right? At the interview, even for the first 6 months or a year, some people can have that, they have this mask they're wearing, right? And personality comes from the word persona, which is actually mask, it comes from back in the day in Latin, that people had masks, that they had. So, and it can also go the other way. It's the person that looks dull, doesn't present well, doesn't say much, but behind that mask is a super producer that you should hire. So it can be both ways, and that's why if you look at numbers and measures and results, also when you've got your team, you make sure you don't throw out someone early who's actually great. Sometimes we go in and we do internal team audits, and then we find that, the company, they want to get rid of some people. And we go, why? Then we look at their actual performance. We go, you should definitely not throw out this person. They're fantastic. And they go, oh yeah, but he doesn't say much and sits in the corner and, like.
Hire him to talk at the water cooler, or did you hire him to
get? Yeah, it's like, I never know what they're doing and they don't talk. And I go, yeah, but look at all the results they're getting. But see, you can never know that if you're just looking at how people look and feel, or you don't pay people to be busy. You don't pay people to look busy. You pay them for an outcome. So it's like, you need to look at the outcome of that being busy. What's the end result of it? Some people never look busy, but they get a lot done. So it's like, have some key things in. So, you've got those KPIs you talked about and those results. Now plot it on a graph. They should actually be putting in some numbers, like even number of people I received today at reception, number of calls I connected. Because now if the one key thing, actually another golden thing, is that what gets measured gets done. Yeah. What gets measured gets done. So, and also productive people love this game of being measured and love production. So if they've got a stat, they've got a number, they're going to want to get that number to go up. So if you just assign a number to them and you keep track of that and you measure that and you go, look, this is your key number, they'll want to get that graph to go up. So whatever that might be, even if it might be, number of bookings made, number of, then it's like low bookings coming in. So the performer receptionist will start calling all the patients and be like, hey, would you like to make another booking? So they start becoming creative and proactive to get that game happening. And then you can set up rewards in future too. You can reward performance as well down the track. Like salary and pay increases doesn't always have to be in salary. It can be like, hey, you know what? It's a lower salary, but higher rewards because we pay you for your great performance. And these are just some of the ingredients that create high performing teams. But as you can see, there's a few things that need to come into place and ties in together, which is from getting the hiring right, getting the onboarding right, and setting the expectations right, and setting up the future for success for the team.
For sure. And I think the really big thing that you mentioned there is, I know a lot of people struggle where they're like, well, the people are just they're not underachievers, or they're not, at the same level as me and my expectations. And I always go back and say, well, what did you hire them for? If you didn't give them clear expectations, then they are not going to have certainty in terms of what they're even responsible for. So if you give them absolute measures, then the next objection I get a lot of time from clinic owners is saying, well, I don't want to scare someone away with numbers. Well, the numbers are a way to keep track. And people who are A players want certainty. They want to know how they're held accountable, and they want to be held accountable. They don't want to be micromanaged, but they want to be held accountable. They know what numbers they're looking for, and it's easier to be empowered because you want your staff to say, hey, you know what? I'm responsible for this and take ownership over it. because they understand their role in the company, and they don't have someone who's just sitting there collecting a paycheck and you're feeling sorry for Uncle Sam or Aunt Sally, and just saying, well, you know what, they suck, and they're going through hard times in life. And some people get sort of mad, well, it's insensitive. Well, I wouldn't have hired them in the first place. Yeah, people are going to go through some bad times here and there, but like, they've got to have specific metrics. They've got to have accountability, and they got to be A players. Otherwise, you're going to have to micromanage these people. It's going to be a huge pain. And when I grew from, I ended up having 15 staff at the last clinic that I had. And, that's a ton of people to manage. I don't have time to babysit, Sally sitting at the front desk because she's had a bad day or wants to sit on Facebook or whatever it is. Like, listen, these are the metrics, either hit them or you're gone. And, people see that's really, bad, I guess, to some degree, but like, listen, like, we're hiring you for these reasons. And if you stay on, I'm going to resent you. You're going to resent me. And you're always going to feel terrible, and you're just going to quit anyway. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, definitely it's like you want to have an attitude of performance focus in the company. So people know, but the other part is like, once you get good people in, everyone does have a bad day every now and then, or, maybe their pet died. So it's like, they are going to have an emotional thing. So you want to make sure you do have empathy, not sympathy. It's two different things. So absolutely. It's like if someone's going through a bad day, or they're usually a really great person and they're really on their game, but it's like at that moment, something's up. It is also important that their manager just goes, hey, what's up? I noticed that you're a bit different, tell me what's going on. So you do actually want them to a little bit offload to you. Not saying you're their therapist, but from a management point of view, your purpose is to get that person to be productive again and be focused. So you want your team to be focused on their role, but sometimes we're people, so it's like our focus can get distracted because of various things. So you do, as the manager, you do want to quickly get them to offload, and then give them a warm acknowledgement and get them refocused. So if something's happened, I'd be like, hey, John, what's happened? Tell me. Oh, this happened and I'm really upset. And I go, oh, okay, well, look, do you need to go and handle that? Oh, no, I'm okay now. It's taken care of. Go, okay, look, great to hear. Let me know if you need to talk. And so what happened with that thing you were working on? How are you tracking with that? So I've kind of like cleared up the situation. I've let him know I'm listening. I've heard you. I've acknowledged it. And then I'm bringing his focus back to present time, because his attention was at the back. So now I've brought him present time. So there's a bit of both, but I think if you do hire on performance, you do create a performance culture, and naturally you'll move the curve up. You'll move the curve up through the company, where you do get just more A players who want to play the game, and if someone does have an off day, you just help them through that, and very quickly they bounce out of it.
Yeah. And I think top performers, they don't get stuck in those slumps for like weeks or months and use it as their excuse. And I've seen that where people do. And I think that goes back to what you're even talking about. High performing is it's leadership. And so many people who hire are thinking it's almost like the passive income people you see. I see ad all the time, hey, make $100,000 in your sleep doing nothing. Like, hey, I was snowboarding today and
it doesn't exist.
And the reality is like, when you hire people, you can't just hire people and expect them to make you tons of money and you're going to go there. You've actually got to become a leader and shift a bit about how you are. And that's where it's like working on the business, not in the business, and really being able to be, receptive to managing that team and understanding, like, being a leader. And I think that's a really big thing that people don't necessarily think. They sort of think, if I hire someone, they're going to solve all my problems. Here's all the things that you need to do. Okay, see ya. And especially with administrators, like, you got I hired you for these 3 things, but you know what? Let's add 5 more things to your plate, and then give you shit when you didn't do them, even though I didn't tell you that was your job.
Yeah, it's like, look, to build a culture of like a great team, we always say, look, building a great team is not an overnight process. And the leadership is 100% crucial, because you lead from the front, and, when things start going pear-shaped, it's the leader's fault. If my team member makes a mistake, I don't go, oh, she stuffed up. I actually look back at myself and I go, did I actually give her the right training? Because she's a good person. Mm-hmm. So it's like, as leadership is really important. And it's not just a culture of cracking the whip. It's about having that understanding, acknowledgement. A big part that's missing with management is they don't acknowledge staff. and all their attention actually goes to fixing problems and putting fires out. And it's like, if I've got 5 people and 2 of them are superstars and 3 of them are dragging the chain and giving me nightmares and making mistakes and deleting patient records, it's like all my attention goes on that, because that's the problem I've got to fix. And then I go, well, I don't need to even look at those guys that are superstars because they know what to do. They don't need any of my attention. But this is a massive mistake, because the most valuable thing you can give a staff member is actually not even money. It's your attention. That's the most valuable thing you can give someone. So if you constantly give your attention to your low producers, what will happen is like you'll actually get more low producers, because the good producers, they'll start going, oh, maybe to get attention, I need to drop my performance a bit or cause some problems. Maybe that'll get me some attention, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that, for sure. I noticed that I worked with like sports teams, and I worked with NFL players and American football, I guess instead. Mm-hmm. And like one thing that was a strategy used by a guy named Charles Poliquin, who's like a really famous strength coach, is he would pair up low performers with high performers and high performers with low performers. So the high performers, when they were in the chain dragging group, would be like, guys, I don't want to work here, like haul ass. And the people who are, the low performers with the high level people, they're kind of like, well, I got to pick this up. So, I think that kind of brought me back to that sort of strategy.
Great example. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I want to go back, if you don't mind, to what you're talking about in terms of the reference checking. Because I think it's a really important part too. And I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't check references because, no one's going to give you a bad reference, which I have had bad references, or people who just put random people down or whatever. But I think it's really important maybe to touch on some of those tactics that you can utilize. So I know, like, when I call people, again, they're going to say, well, yes, this person's amazing. So I like to ask questions sometimes, and maybe you have different questions you like to ask, but I'll ask them questions that are kind of like sort of almost tricking them to some degree. So that way I phrase something in a different way so that catches them off guard. So if I say something like, would you hire this person again? Yes, I would. Okay, cool. So tell me about like a time that they had a difficulty that they had to work through, and what that process was like, and how you helped support them. So I might ask a question like that, or I might ask them a question that's sort of related to like off the beaten path of a typical type of question. Like I'm basically assuming that there's a deficiency or a potential problem with this person, and tell me about that kind of thing. So that way they're not like, oh, well, how do I answer this because I'm not pre-framed? What are your kind of thoughts on that, or what's your sort of strategy?
Yeah, sure. Good question.
Sounds like you do like detective work deep into their lives, or like
not quite.
follow them around or something like that.
We have been called detectives, but it's not because we try and trick the referee. Mm-hmm. So it's actually quite simple. If you've done your interview right, and you've got results and claims from the person, the purpose of the reference check is to verify that, in simple terms. Mm. So it's pretty black and white, They said they brought 80 patients in the last, every month
Yeah.
But you don't volunteer that information. You go, hey, look, they said, what was their job? Okay, how long were they there? Got it. And, what was the result they needed to achieve? Oh, they had to, help us bring patients in. Okay, and did they get any done? Nah, not really. And then you're looking at your interview and they told you they brought in 80 a month. And you go, okay, here we have a problem. And then you go, oh, but they said that they did this much. Oh, no way. So it's actually factual. We try and take the emotion out of doing reference checks, because sometimes also what you find is the referee might be emotional, misemotional as well. Like they didn't want to lose that person, or they're upset, and now they want to give a really emotional bad reference. But then you're actually you start checking the facts, and you go, okay, so doesn't make sense. This person did add value. So we have standard, reference check questions that we ask about, were they reliable and arrive on time, and how was their motivation, and how would you rate them? But it's that's secondary. The first part we want to verify what the candidate has told us, because essentially that's why you're doing the reference check, right? You're drawn to them by by how they presented and the things they said. So we just want to verify that and do the full reference check as well. But the second part is you want to make sure you verify who you're talking to, because a lot of the time you get a colleague or a junior, and like a teammate, colleagues, juniors, they don't count as referees. They do not count. Even clients don't really count. It has to be someone above. It needs to be someone senior to the candidate that you're speaking to. And then you need to actually check with HR or payroll or switchboard that this person actually reported to this person. And then you need to also verify the phone number. Otherwise, you have no idea who you're talking to is actually real and the right person. Yeah. So it's the two-part verification: verify the verifier and then verify the results and the claims. So we keep it in that format. And so our checks are very different to the traditional way of doing it. We have all the standard questions that we ask, but a big part of it is actually verifying what we've been told and the production claims.
Yeah, I love it for sure. Okay, cool. So so now we've got, to kind of recap, it's like we've got the job description sorted out because we know why we're hiring someone, the skill sets, we've given them the contract now. And the next big thing that I find that a lot of people make a mistake is it's like, cool, you start Monday, I'll start booking you patients in. And meanwhile, they don't really do any sort of, setup or anything like that. And I find, like, for me, I like to have that 90-day or 12-week period where we're actually putting a plan together. Now, what I do is I have every week like goals and things that they need to be able to really do so that we can track them. And I find really like the first like 7 days, I'm really focused on the first 7 to 10 days, really focused on getting them to get sort of proficient with the skill sets and stuff, and making sure that I'm not like babying them from the beginning. Because I find that a lot of people, they'd like to take it easy on people, and it gives them almost a false sense of security that, like, oh, I just left this huge, really stressful job and I'm coming here and like, it's not so bad and everything's sort of calm and whatnot. And then, all of a sudden, couple weeks or months later, all of a sudden it's like, well, this person's not performing, but you sort of took it too easy on them. So maybe tell me like a little about your onboarding sequence and kind of how you do it, and some tips and tricks in that. Yeah,
sure. Look, I don't put so much attention on, I've got to test this person out in 3 months or 6 months. I don't even look at that. I go, okay, I've hired this person to become established as, let's say, an office manager or a practice manager or a sales manager, whatever it is. I've hired this person to become established in this role. I don't even look at the probation. And then what I do is I go, okay, so there's going to be a progression for this person. And then I map out what that progression is, because also I'm forking out this amount of salary. So I need to be getting a result. And look, I've had people start getting productive from day 2 in the job. It's like, especially for smaller companies, you don't have the luxury to put someone in training for 2 weeks before you start seeing some value. You need to start getting people productive. And the other part is, you don't want to put someone straight into theory, straight into training. You actually want to mix it up. It needs to be a bit of training, bit of practical, bit of training, bit of practical from day one, because you actually want the person to start getting a taste for it at the beginning. So in even the day one, you actually want to get them into production, even if it's like, hey, I want you to go and clean up the filing system. I want you to go and just clear up that kitchen area. Whatever it might be, you actually want to get them into production. Because one thing we say is, like, production is the basis of morale. Make someone productive, keep them busy, and they'll be happy. So it's like, you get them productive, you get them contributing in any area. It doesn't have to be even specific to their job, and you have a happier staff member. And then start giving them, okay, now do this training, now do this check sheet. So we do it gradual. But we always know when we hire someone, by the end of week 1, they should be at this point. They should be at this level of knowledge, milestone, training, or some sort of outcome, and then by the end of week 2, week 3, it should be this way. We don't, I'm not I don't have 1,000-person company where people can sort of just stay in training for 3 weeks. I think even if I did, I would want people to be productive somewhat from week 1. So like I said, I've had people being like, start adding value from day 2. day one is more training and you want to pace it out, but yeah, never put someone in full-time training. Always keep an element of production, and it doesn't even have to be about their job specific. You just want to get them contributing value in some way.
Yeah, totally get
So
it. And I think that's really
important
for us too, entrepreneurial run businesses, is like, if we hire a PT, it might be 80K a year that we're hiring them for. We got to get some sort of value. So I learned one thing from another physical therapist, and he's a mentor to physical therapist Paul Go, and he talks about like the teach, show, and do method. So he sort of like teaches someone a concept, he shows them how he does it, and then they do it and they kind of get feedback on that. So I've sort of incorporated that, and I felt it was really good. As well as having like a clear directions at the end of week one. These are the things that, we want to achieve for success. And I think that sometimes gives people some clarity as well with kind of what you said, because no one that I've worked with has the time to put someone into training for, all this time period. And I even question, like, when I've worked with bigger companies before, if that's even really efficient anyways, because you've got people who are, they're not doing as much. It's like talking theory. It's like if you wanted to go to the gym to lose weight, and then you're just talking about nutrition, you're doing all this other stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you actually got to go execute these exercises. Oh shit, that's a lot different. So I find that that's really what, when I've worked with corporate businesses before, when I did consulting, I find there was a huge disconnect. People were very like good at talking about it, but okay, well, now go hit the gym floor and book some consultations, pick up the phone and book these patients. And it's like, well, how do I do that? Well, I don't know. We talked about it for 3 weeks and we just spent $5,000 with you. Like, you better get it done. Right.
Yeah. And the reason why you want to bring up the producing earlier is you want to know fast, actually, if they're not up for it and if they're not willing. You don't want someone to come in and be like, oh, what, you want me to do that? That wasn't in my job description. No way, Jose. Like, you don't want that kind of attitude either. So it's like, because in first day 2, you don't know everything. You need to be helping in other ways. So one line to also always add in the job description under the responsibilities is to say, you'll do this and that. And then also add in like anything else that you may need to do time to time that might be out of your job description, but will help the organization moving forward. Yeah. So it's like adding that. So then if you go, hey, look, I just need you to take these 5 coffee mugs to the thing. They go, oh, it's not in my, not, if you've hired right, they should never say that, but it's like, just as an extra precaution, it's like you might need to put that line in just to safeguard. But yeah, it's like, you just want people who come in and who are ready to help, it's like they go, hey, how can I help? How can I, got that done? How can I get in? And so yeah, production early on and never full-time training. And just from day one, get them to start contributing. Absolutely. It's like from within the first 2 hours, I usually put them into training. And then I go, all right, cool. Let's go through this, and this. Now go and do that.
Cool. I love it. Awesome. Cool. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing, your expertise. It's definitely going to help a lot of people make the right decisions and save them a lot of pain and heartbreak and everything else. Is there anything else you wanted to summarize just before we sign off?
No, and that's the key thing. It's just, take your time in hiring if you need to, and just make sure you do all those processes. Really do reference checks properly. Don't just slide over it, and just set up people for success. Cool.
I love it. Awesome. So if people want to learn a little bit more about you and some of the stuff that you have, or get help with their hiring processes, how can they find you?
So they can find me depending on where they see this. If it's on Facebook, they can add me. I have a group on Facebook as well called Building High Performance Teams. They can join that and learn more. They can add me on LinkedIn or send me an email, negar@performia.com.au, and I'm happy to see where they're at and help.
Perfect. Awesome. I'll add that below for anyone who's watching this in the future as well. And I really appreciate you popping on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Brad.